Marcus thought the glass house would be their final dead end, the last desperate decision of a man who had already failed at everything that mattered. But what he discovered inside those transparent walls wasn't just shelter. It was a secret architectural masterpiece worth $80 million hidden in plain sight while the world dismissed it as worthless. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to subscribe because tomorrow we have an extra special story that will blow your mind. Follow this story to the very end and comment below which city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. Victor Sterling slammed his fist on the mahogany conference table so hard that the crystal water glasses trembled and one tipped over, spilling across architectural blueprints that represented 3 years of planning and $40 million in preliminary investments. "What do you mean?" he said. "No." His voice echoed through the corner office on the 32nd floor, a voice accustomed to getting exactly what it wanted, when it wanted it, however it wanted it. Bill Morrison, his head of acquisitions, took an involuntary step backward. In 15 years of working for Sterling Development Corporation, he had seen Victor angry many times. But this was different. This was the kind of rage that ended careers. "Mr. Sterling, the man won't even take our calls anymore. We offered him $500,000 for a property that was assessed at less than $200,000 18 months ago. He just keeps saying no." "Then make him say yes." "Sir, we've tried everything. We've contacted the county assessor about reassessing his property taxes. We've had the road department flag his access road for emergency repairs. We've sent the fire marshal to inspect his wood stove. The pressure campaign has been running for 6 weeks and he hasn't budged." Victor Sterling turned to face the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the San Francisco skyline. At 52 years old, he had built an empire worth over $2 billion through a simple philosophy: everything has a price and everyone can be bought. It was just a matter of finding the right number and applying the right pressure. He had grown up poor, genuinely desperately poor, in a farming community in Central California. His father had lost their family farm when Victor was 12 years old, unable to pay property taxes, the costs that kept rising while crop prices kept falling. He remembered standing in the driveway watching strangers carry their furniture out of the house, remembered his mother crying in the car as they drove away, with everything they owned stuffed into a station wagon with a broken taillight. That day, Victor Sterling had made himself a promise. He would never be powerless again. He would never be the one standing in the driveway watching his life get carried away by people with more money and more leverage. He would be the one doing the carrying, and for 40 years he had kept that promise. "Tell me about this man," Victor said without turning from the window. "This Marcus Thompson, who is he? What's his weakness?" Morrison consulted his tablet, scrolling through the file they had compiled over the past several months. 38 years old. Widower wife died of cancer 3 years ago. One daughter 8 years old. Before his wife got sick, he was a construction foreman making decent money. The medical bills destroyed him financially. He's been working 2 minimum wage jobs, living in a 1-bedroom apartment in East Oakland. He inherited the glass house property about 8 months ago from some distant relative he barely knew. "So he's desperate." "That's what we thought, sir. But desperate people usually take the money. He won't even discuss numbers." Victor finally turned from the window. His eyes had gone cold in a way that made Morrison's stomach clench. "What about the daughter?" "Sir?" "The daughter. You said he has a daughter, 8 years old. What's her situation?" Morrison hesitated. There were lines he was willing to cross for his job, but he wasn't sure this was one of them. "She has asthma, sir. The Oakland apartment apparently had mold issues that were making it worse. Since they moved to the glass house, her health has improved significantly." Victor nodded slowly, processing this information. So he's not just being stubborn about money. He's protecting his sick child. He thinks that ridiculous glass structure is actually good for her. "It appears that way, sir." "Then we need to make him understand that staying there is more dangerous for her than leaving. Increase the pressure. I want building inspectors there twice a week. I want the county to condemn that access road entirely. I want every possible violation documented and reported. If that house is standing in 6 months, I want to know why." Morrison swallowed hard. "Sir, there's something else you should know. An architecture student from Berkeley has been visiting the property. She's been taking photographs, making measurements. There's been some chatter in academic circles about the house being significant somehow. Something about the original architect." "What architect?" "A man named James Holloway. Apparently he was some kind of pioneer in sustainable design back in the 70s. He died young, and this was supposedly his last project. Some people are calling it his masterpiece." For the first time, something flickered across Victor Sterling's face that wasn't pure aggression. It was something closer to calculation. "His masterpiece," Victor repeated. And how much would a masterpiece be worth, hypothetically? I don't know, sir. His other buildings have sold for tens of millions, but those were commercial properties. No one has ever appraised a private residence of his. Victor Sterling smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. Then I think we need to find out exactly what our friend Marcus Thompson is sitting on. And once he knows, the equation changes entirely. A desperate man might turn down $500,000 on principle, but 80 million, 100 million, no one turns down that kind of money. No one. He picked up his phone and dialed a number from memory. Margaret, it's Victor Sterling. I need a favor. There's a property in Mendocino County I need you to appraise. Quietly. I want to know exactly what it's worth before the current owner does. And Margaret, this one is important to me. Very important. He hung up and turned back to the window, looking out at the city he had conquered one building at a time. 6 months, he said to Morrison.
I want
that property in 6 months, whatever it takes. What Victor Sterling didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have known, was that the man he was trying to crush had already lost everything once and survived. Marcus Thompson had buried his wife, watched his career collapse, and learned to feed his daughter on $23 a week. He had developed a tolerance for suffering that money couldn't buy and pressure couldn't break. And the glass house that Victor Sterling saw as an obstacle to his development project was about to become something else entirely. It was about to become a fortress. 8 months earlier, Marcus Thompson had been sitting in a security booth at a warehouse in Oakland at 3 o'clock in the morning when his phone rang with a call that would change everything. He almost didn't answer. Calls at that hour were never good news. Bill collectors with no respect for time zones or scam artists working overnight shifts in call centers halfway around the world. But something made him pick up some instinct that this particular ring meant something different. Mr. Thompson, Mr. Marcus James Thompson. Yeah, that's me. My name is Patricia Goldberg. I'm an estate attorney in Sacramento. I'm calling about your great-uncle Robert Whitman. The name landed somewhere in Marcus's memory like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples outward through years of accumulated life. Robert Whitman, his grandmother's brother, a quiet man who sent Christmas cards with $5 bills tucked inside, who Marcus had visited exactly once 15 years ago during a cross-country road trip after college. They had eaten lunch at a diner in Santa Rosa. Robert had been kind and asked about Marcus's plans, said something about family being the only thing that matters when everything else falls apart. Marcus remembered thinking the old man seemed lonely, but at peace with his loneliness, like someone who had made choices long ago and learned to live with them. I'm sorry to tell you that Robert passed away 3 weeks ago, the attorney continued. Oh. Marcus searched for appropriate words and found none. How do you mourn someone you barely knew? I'm sorry to hear that. Mr. Thompson, your great-uncle left you something in his will. You were specifically named as beneficiary for a property he inherited from his late wife, Margaret. Marcus's brain stalled on the word property. In his current reality, property meant something abstract, something other people owned, something that existed in a world of mortgages and equity and investment portfolios that had nothing to do with his life of bus passes and coupon clipping and carefully rationed meals. What kind of property? A house in Mendocino County. I should tell you up front, Mr. Thompson, it's unconventional, very remote, built almost entirely of glass. Glass? Yes, Margaret lived there alone for nearly 50 years after her husband passed. Robert maintained it after her death, but never actually lived there himself. We've contacted several other potential heirs, and none of them were interested. Why not? Patricia Goldberg paused, and Marcus could hear her choosing her words carefully. The property is approximately 3 hours from the nearest major town. There are no utility connections, no grid power, no municipal water, no natural gas. The structure itself is highly unusual. Previous assessors have described it as impractical for residential use. I don't want to mislead you, Mr. Thompson. Most people have dismissed it as worthless. Worthless. The word should have been a warning, should have made Marcus thank the attorney for her time and hang up. But something in him, the part that had learned to find value in things other people threw away, the part that knew how to turn expired groceries and secondhand clothes into survival, heard something different in that word. Worthless meant no one else wanted it. Worthless meant he might actually be able to keep it. The property taxes are current, the attorney continued. Robert made sure of that, and there's a small maintenance fund about $15,000 designated for upkeep. $15,000. Marcus had to grip the edge of his desk to keep his hands from shaking. $15,000 was more money than he had seen in one place in 3 years. $15,000 was 8 months of rent on their cramped apartment. $15,000 was 52 of Lily's inhalers, which cost $287 each without the insurance he couldn't afford. Mr. Thompson, are you still there? Yeah, I'm here. I'm just processing. I understand this is a lot to take in. You don't have to make any decisions right now, but I wanted you to know that if you want the property, it's yours. All you have to do is come sign the papers. That night after his shift ended, and he had taken 2 buses home through the gray pre-dawn streets of Oakland, Marcus sat at the tiny kitchen table in their apartment and stared at the notes he had scribbled during the phone call. Glass house, Mendocino County, 3 hours from anywhere. No utilities. Worthless, but also $15,000. Property taxes current. His if he wanted it. The apartment around him was silent except for the hum of the ancient refrigerator and the occasional wheeze from Lily's bedroom, the sound of his daughter's lungs struggling against air thick with mold spores and done in desperation. The landlord had promised to fix the ventilation 6 months ago. The city inspector had promised to follow up on Marcus's complaint 4 months ago. Nothing had changed except Lily's breathing, which was getting worse. Their rent was going up again in January. Another $200 a month they didn't have. Marcus had done the math 100 times, and no matter how he arranged the numbers, they didn't add up to survival. They were 3 months, maybe 4, from being homeless. A worthless glass house in the middle of nowhere might be exactly what they needed. He waited until the weekend to tell Lily about the inheritance. She was sitting at the card table that served as both kitchen table and homework desk, working through a math worksheet with the same intense concentration she brought to everything she did. Elena's concentration that focused thorough approach to problems that Marcus had loved in his wife, and now saw echoed in their daughter. "Lily, can I talk to you about something?" She looked up immediately alert. At 8 years old, she had already learned to read the weight in adult voices to distinguish between talk about something conversations that meant nothing and talk about something conversations that meant everything. "Are we okay, Daddy?" The question broke his heart a little, as it always did. No child should have to ask that question. No child should know enough about the world to know it needed asking. "We're okay, baby. Actually, I have some interesting news. Do you remember me ever talking about great-great-uncle Robert?" Lily scrunched her face in thought. "The one who sent the Christmas cards with the $5. "That's him. He passed away a few weeks ago." Oh no. Genuine sadness crossed her face, even for someone she'd never met. She had her mother's heart, the kind that felt loss deeply, even abstract loss. "That's so sad." "He left us something, Lily. A house." Her eyes went wide. In the cramped apartment, where they had spent the last 3 years, where they could hear every footstep from upstairs and every argument from next door, where the walls seemed to press closer. Every day, the word house carried enormous weight. A house, a real house that we could live in. Maybe it's different. The lawyer said it's made almost entirely of glass. Glass? Lily's voice shot up an octave with excitement. "Like a castle, a glass castle, like in the fairy tales." Marcus smiled despite himself. Trust Lily to find the magic in a situation everyone else had dismissed as impractical. "Maybe something like that. We'd have to go see it first. It's far away, and it might not be what we expect. But yes, possibly a glass castle." "When can we go? Can we go now? Can we go tomorrow?" "Saturday," Marcus said, holding up a hand to slow the flood of enthusiasm. "We'll drive up on Saturday." That night, after Lily had finally stopped asking questions and gone to sleep, Marcus sat alone in the dark living room, on the fold-out couch that served as his bed. Through the thin wall, he could hear Lily breathing the faint wheeze that never quite went away, the sound of lungs working too hard against air that was slowly poisoning her. He had made so many mistakes, so many decisions that seemed right at the time and turned out to be disasters. He had trusted a company that promised good jobs and then shipped those jobs overseas. He had believed the doctors when they said Elena's treatment would work, had drained every account and maxed every credit card chasing hope that turned out to be a mirage. He had tried so hard to hold everything together and everything had fallen apart anyway. Maybe this was another mistake. Maybe the glass house would turn out to be a ruin, a fantasy, a cruel joke played by a universe that had already taken so much from them. But maybe, just maybe, it was something else. Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived in the apartment below them and watched Lily every day while Marcus worked, was the only person he told about the inheritance. She was 71 years old, a retired nurse from Guatemala who had raised 4 children on her own after her husband died in a factory accident in 1987. She had appointed herself Lily's unofficial grandmother from the day they moved in 3 years ago, and she refused any payment for the hours she spent caring for Marcus's daughter. "A glass house," she said when Marcus explained the situation. She was sitting at her own kitchen table, which somehow always smelled like cinnamon and comfort, her weathered hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. In the mountains. That sounds like something from a dream. Or a nightmare. I don't know anything about living without electricity or running water. I don't know how to heat a house made of glass. I don't even know if it's actually livable. But you're thinking about going. It wasn't a question. Mrs. Rodriguez had known Marcus long enough to read what he wasn't saying. We're 3 months from being evicted, Marcus admitted. Lily's asthma is getting worse. Every option I can think of leads to the same place, homeless, or living in a shelter, or splitting up so she can go somewhere safer while I figure things out. And I can't... Carmen, I can't let them take her away from me. I can't. Mrs. Rodriguez reached across the table and took his hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong for a woman her age, strong and certain.
Marcus.
My mother used to say that God hides blessings in strange packages. A glass house in the middle of nowhere that sounds like a very strange package indeed. What if it's not a blessing? What if it's just one more disaster? Then you'll know. You'll see it with your own eyes and you'll know. But Marcus... She leaned forward, her dark eyes holding his. You won't know until you look, and not knowing is worse than any truth. Saturday morning arrived cold and gray, with fog sitting low over Oakland like a wet blanket. Marcus had packed the Honda the night before, snacks, water bottles, Lily's inhaler, a flashlight, his phone charger, the folder of documents the attorney had sent him. Everything they might need for a day trip into the unknown. Lily was vibrating with excitement from the moment she woke up. She had chosen her outfit carefully, her adventure clothes, hamados, which consisted of jeans with patches on the knees, and her mother's old sweatshirt, which was still too big for her, but which she refused to give up. She had also brought Hopeful. Hopeful was a stuffed rabbit gray, and worn from years of love that Elena had given Lily the day she was born. He had been through everything with them. The happy years in the little house with the yellow shutters, the terrifying months of Elena's illness, the cramped desperation of the Oakland apartment. Wherever Lily went, Hopeful went. Are you sure you want to bring him? Marcus asked as they loaded into the car. It's a long drive. Hopeful wants to see the glass castle, Lily said firmly. He's never seen a castle before. Fair enough. Mrs. Rodriguez was waiting at her window to wave goodbye as she always did when they went anywhere. She had pressed a small wooden cross into Lily's hands the night before. My mother gave this to me when I left Guatemala. Now it protects you. And made Marcus promise to call the moment they arrived, even if he had to drive back down the mountain to get cell service. The drive north took them through a world that changed by degrees, city to suburb, suburbs to farmland, farmland to forest. Lily pressed her face to the window while watching the landscape transform, asking questions about everything she saw. What are those trees called, Daddy? Why are they so tall? Those are redwoods, baby. Some of them are over 1,000 years old. 1,000 years. Her voice was hushed with wonder. They were alive when there were knights and princesses. Even before that. Mommy would have loved them. The statement came quietly, matter-of-factly, in the way Lily had learned to talk about her mother, not pretending the loss didn't exist, but not letting it consume everything either. She loved big trees. Remember the oak tree in our old backyard? Marcus remembered. Elena had hung a tire swing from that tree, had spent hours pushing Lily higher and higher while their daughter shrieked with laughter. When they sold the house to pay medical bills, that tree was one of the things Marcus missed most. Not the house itself, but the tree and all the memories that lived in its branches. I remember, he said. She would have loved these. They drove in comfortable silence after that, the highway unwinding through hills and forests that seemed to belong to a different world than the crowded streets they had left behind. When the GPS signal finally gave out somewhere north of Santa Rosa, Marcus pulled over to consult the hand-drawn map the attorney had included with the documents. Are we lost? Lily asked. Not lost, just navigating differently. She grinned, recognizing one of her mother's phrases. Elena had never admitted to being lost, only to navigating differently, or taking the scenic route, or discovering new possibilities. Mommy used to say that. I know, baby. I learned it from her. The roads got smaller as they went from highway to county road to unnamed blacktop to dirt track that looked like it hadn't seen maintenance in decades. The Honda bounced and scraped over ruts and potholes, and Marcus winced at every sound, praying the suspension would hold. Turn left at the big oak tree with the lightning scar, the directions said. They found it a massive oak split nearly in half by some long-ago bolt from the sky. Both halves still alive, still growing, reaching toward each other across the wound like hands trying to clasp. That tree got hurt, Lily observed. but it's still growing. Sometimes that's what survival looks like, Marcus said, turning onto the final stretch of road. 2 miles of rough track through oak and madrone forest, then 3. Then the trees opened up and Marcus had to stop the car because he couldn't breathe. The glass house sat in the clearing, like something that had fallen from another world. In the late afternoon light, it seemed to glow from within its transparent walls, catching and scattering sunlight into rainbow patterns across the hillside. Multi-leveled sections cantilevered out over the sloping ground, supported by steel beams painted the same deep green as the surrounding forest so that the structure seemed to emerge from the landscape rather than sit upon it. "Daddy," Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "Daddy, it's real. The glass castle is real." They sat in the car for a long moment, neither of them moving, as if any sudden motion might break whatever spell had placed this impossible building in their path. Finally, Lily unbuckled her seatbelt. "Can we go inside?" They walked toward the house slowly, their footsteps crunching on gravel and dried leaves. Up close, Marcus could see details he had missed from the car, the way the glass panels were beveled at the edges to catch light, the way the foundation stones were fitted together without visible mortar, the way the whole structure seemed to hover slightly above the ground, as if it might take flight at any moment. The front door was glass, like everything else nearly invisible against the transparent wall. Taped to the frame was a brass key and a note in spidery, elderly handwriting: "For whoever inherits this place, it's more than it appears. Live beautifully. Trust the house." Marcus's hands trembled as he fitted the key into the lock. The mechanism turned smoothly, as if it had been waiting for exactly this moment, and the door swung open with a soft sigh. Inside, the world transformed. Light streamed through every surface, breaking into colors. Marcus didn't have names for painting, but created the polished concrete floor with patterns that shifted and moved as clouds passed across the sun outside. The space was open and flowing levels connected by staircases that seemed to float in midair. Built-in benches and surfaces emerged from the structure itself, all curves and clean lines designed to complement rather than compete with the light. Lily ran into the center of the main room, her arms outstretched, spinning in a slow circle. "Daddy, Daddy, look, I can see everything. The trees and the sky and the birds, I can see everything." Marcus stood just inside the doorway, unable to move. The light that filled this space was unlike any light he had ever experienced. Not harsh or glaring, but soft and alive, constantly changing, constantly moving. It felt less like illumination and more like presence, as if the building itself was welcoming them. "Is this really ours?" Lily asked, stopping her spinning to look at him with eyes full of wonder. Marcus looked at his daughter, at the transparent walls surrounding her, at the way the afternoon light turned her hair into a halo of gold. "Yeah, baby," he said, his voice rough with emotions he couldn't name. "I think it really is." They explored for hours, climbing the floating staircases, discovering bedrooms defined not by walls, but by changes in floor level and ceiling height. Finding a kitchen that faced east with counters carved from single pieces of stone standing in a bathroom where skylights made artificial light unnecessary. In what appeared to be a study, Marcus found shelves lined with books on architecture, gardening, sustainable living, solar power. And journals. Dozens of handwritten journals in the same spidery script as the note on the door. "Year 1, the first one began. James is gone. The house is all I have left of him. I will learn to live in it the way he intended. I will become worthy of what he created. James." The architect, the lawyer, had mentioned Margaret's husband, who had built this place and died before he could see it lived in. "Daddy," Lily appeared beside him, hopeful, tucked under one arm. "I can breathe here." Marcus looked at her sharply. "What do you mean?" "My chest doesn't feel tight. It usually feels tight, like someone's sitting on it. But here it just feels normal. Like when I was little before I got sick." It was only then that Marcus realized he hadn't heard her wheeze once since they entered the house. Not during the spinning, not during the stair climbing, not during any of the excited exploration that would normally have left her breathless and reaching for her inhaler. The clean mountain air, the absence of mold and pollution, the sunlight streaming through walls that had no dark corners for spores to grow. "Can we stay?" Lily asked. "Please, Daddy, can we stay here?" Marcus looked around at the impossible house, at the light that seemed to embrace them, at his daughter's face filled with hope for the first time in years. The rational part of his brain was screaming warnings, no utilities, no experience with off-grid living, 3 hours from any help if something went wrong. They could die here. They could fail in new and spectacular ways, but they were already dying in Oakland, already failing in slow, grinding ways that led nowhere but down. "Let me think about it," he said. "Let me figure out if we can actually make this work." but they both knew, standing there in the golden light of the glass house while the sun began its descent toward the distant ocean, that the decision had already been made. They weren't leaving. They were home. The drive back to Oakland that night felt like traveling backward in time, leaving something new and luminous to return to something old and suffocating. Lily fell asleep before they hit the highway, hopeful clutched to her chest, a small smile on her face that Marcus couldn't remember seeing in months. He called Mrs. Rodriguez from a gas station to let her know they were safe. "How was it?" she asked. "The glass house." Marcus struggled to find words for what he had seen. "It's real," he finally said. "It's impossible and impractical and probably crazy, but Carmen? The way Lily breathed there, the way she moved? I haven't seen her that free since before Elena got sick." "Then you know what you have to do." I know. I just need to figure out how." The next 2 weeks were a blur of logistics and preparation. Marcus gave notice at both his jobs, the security guard position and the weekend construction work. His bosses were surprised but not sorry to see him go. There were always more desperate people willing to work for minimum wage. He gave notice to the landlord, who shrugged and said he had 5 families ready to move into the apartment the moment it was vacant. That was Oakland, more people than places, more need than housing, more desperation than hope. He sorted through their possessions with ruthless efficiency. Clothes for all seasons. Books Lily couldn't bear to leave behind. The photograph of Elena in the yellow sundress. His basic tools. Her sewing kit that had been her mother's. The ceramic bird that had belonged to his grandmother. Hopeful, of course. Everything else, the fold-out couch, the card table, the dishes that didn't match, the accumulated debris of 3 years of barely surviving, went to charity or the curb. When Marcus was done, everything they owned fit in the Honda with room to spare. Mrs. Rodriguez came to say goodbye on their last morning in Oakland. She was trying not to cry and failing. "You call me," she said, hugging Lily so tightly the girl squeaked. "Every week. I want to know you're healthy and happy." "I promise, Carmen," Marcus said. "And when we're settled, you'll come visit." "A glass house in the mountains." She shook her head, but she was smiling through her tears. "My mother would say you're chasing a rainbow, but sometimes I think rainbows are meant to be chased." They pulled away from the apartment building at 7 in the morning, the November sky gray and heavy with rain that had been threatening for days. Lily twisted in her seat to wave at Mrs. Rodriguez until they turned the corner and she disappeared from view. "Are you scared, Daddy?" Lily asked as they merged onto the highway heading north. "A little," Marcus admitted. "Are you... a little?" She was quiet for a moment, looking out at the city passing by the last time she would see it as home. "But Mommy always said that being brave isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing it anyway." "Your mommy was very smart." "I know, I'm smart too. I'm going to figure out how to live in the glass castle, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to be okay." Marcus reached over and squeezed her hand. "Yeah, baby, we're going to be okay." When they arrived at the glass house, the afternoon sun was breaking through the clouds for the first time all day. The timing felt deliberate, as if the house had been waiting for them and had arranged the weather to welcome them home. They unloaded the car, and Tripp's clothes and books and tools and memories carried through the glass door into the space that would shape their new lives. Lily ran from room to room, claiming spaces, making plans. "I want this one for my bedroom. I can see the sunrise from here." "The kitchen is so big we could make pancakes every morning." "Daddy, look, there's a fireplace. Can we make a fire tonight, please?" Marcus tried to match her enthusiasm, but reality was already pressing in. They had no food in the house, no firewood prepared, no clear idea how any of the systems worked. The sun was going down, and with it, the temperature. He found the wood stove Lily had pointed out, a beautiful thing, all black iron and glass doors, clearly custom-made to match the house's aesthetic. But it was empty and cold, and Marcus had no idea how to operate it safely. The first night they slept on their air mattress in the center of the main room, piled under every blanket they owned. The glass ceiling above them showed a sky filled with more stars than Marcus had ever seen in his life, millions of them scattered across the darkness like diamonds on black velvet. "Mommy's up there somewhere," Lily said softly, her breath making small clouds in the cold air. "Yeah?" Marcus said. "I think she is." "She sent us here. I know she did. She found this place and she made sure we got it." Marcus didn't argue with this logic. In the dark under a sky full of stars in a house made of light, anything seemed possible, even messages from the dead. "Get some sleep, baby. Tomorrow we start learning how to live here." But sleep was slow to come. Marcus lay awake listening to the silence, no sirens, no traffic, no neighbors fighting, and felt something he couldn't name shift in his chest. For 3 years he had been running. running from bill collectors and landlords and the memory of his wife dying in a hospital bed while machines beeped and doctors frowned. Running toward nothing except the next day's survival, the next month's rent, the next crisis to be barely averted. Now, lying in the glass house with starlight streaming through the ceiling and his daughter breathing easily beside him, he felt the running finally stop. They had arrived somewhere. Whether it was salvation or disaster remained to be seen. But they had arrived, and tomorrow they would begin. The first morning in the glass house, Marcus woke to a sound he didn't recognize. It took him several confused seconds to realize it was silence, pure complete silence, broken only by birdsong and wind moving through oak trees. He sat up on the air mattress, his breath visible in the cold air, and looked around at the space that was now supposed to be their home. Sunlight was streaming through the eastern glass walls, painting everything gold and amber. Lily was still asleep beside him, hopeful clutched to her chest, her face relaxed in a way he hadn't seen in months. She wasn't wheezing. For the first time in 3 years, his daughter had slept through an entire night without the rattling breath that usually woke him in panic. Marcus sat very still watching her chest rise and fall in easy, even rhythms, and felt tears prick at his eyes. Then the cold hit him. The temperature inside the house couldn't have been more than 40 degrees. Their breath made clouds. The concrete floor, which had felt warm yesterday afternoon, was now ice against his feet. "Okay," Marcus said quietly to himself. First problem, heat. He found the wood stove in the center of the main room, that beautiful black iron thing with glass doors, and opened it to discover it was completely empty. No wood, no kindling, nothing to burn. He checked the areas around the stove and found a small brass door in the floor that opened to reveal a storage space underneath, but it too was empty. Margaret Holloway had died over a year ago. Whatever firewood she'd stored had either been used up or removed. Marcus pulled on his coat and stepped outside. The morning air was sharp and clean, cold enough to make his lungs ache. Around the house, the forest pressed close, oak and madrone and manzanita, with fallen branches scattered across the ground. He gathered what he could carry, arms full of damp sticks and mossy logs that he already knew wouldn't burn well. Back inside, he tried to arrange them in the stove the way he'd seen in movies, crumpled newspaper underneath kindling. On top, larger pieces above that. The newspaper caught. The kindling smoked. The larger pieces sat there wet and stubborn, refusing to do anything useful. "Daddy, don't..." Lily's voice came from the air mattress. "What's that smell?" "I'm trying to make a fire. It's not going well." She appeared beside him, wrapped in a blanket, peering into the smoky stove. "The wood's wet." "I know." "Mrs. Rodriguez has a fireplace. She says you have to use dry wood or it just makes smoke." "I know, baby. This is all I could find." Lily considered the problem with the serious expression she got when working through math homework. Maybe there's dry wood somewhere else, like in a shed or something. Marcus hadn't thought to look for outbuildings. He'd been so focused on the house itself that he hadn't explored the property. They found the woodshed 50 yards behind the house, half hidden by overgrown brush. It was a simple structure, 3 walls and a roof, but inside it was stacked floor to ceiling with firewood so dry it was almost white. Years' worth of wood split and stacked with careful precision. "Margaret," Marcus breathed, "you thought of everything." They hauled armloads of dry wood back to the house, and this time when Marcus built his fire, it caught immediately. Within an hour, the glass house had transformed from refrigerator to sanctuary warmth, radiating from the stove and somehow spreading through the entire space. "The floor's getting warm," Lily reported, pressing her palm to the concrete. "How is the floor getting warm?" Marcus didn't know. He wouldn't understand until later, after reading Margaret's journals, that the floors contained radiant heating tubes connected to the wood stove, that the concrete acted as thermal mass to store and slowly release heat, that every element of the house had been designed to work together in ways he was only beginning to discover. For now, it was enough that they were warm. By the end of that first week, Marcus understood why everyone had called the house worthless. Living there was relentless work. The wood stove needed feeding every few hours or the temperature dropped. The water had to be hand-pumped from the well because the electric pump required more power than the aging solar system could provide. Every meal was an exercise in creativity, cooked on a camp stove they'd brought from Oakland, until Marcus figured out how to use the wood stove's cooking surface. The solar panels on the roof produced electricity, but barely enough for lights and his phone charger. Anything else, a radio, a space heater, even a coffee maker, would drain the batteries before morning. "We're like pioneers," Lily said on the third day, hauling a bucket of water from the well to help with dishes. "Pioneers had horses," Marcus grunted, his arms aching from splitting wood. "Can we get a horse?" "No, we cannot get a horse." "What about a goat? Goats are smaller." Lily. "I'm just saying pioneers had animals. It seems like we should have animals." By the second week, the animals came to them. Marcus was making breakfast when Lily screamed not a frightened scream, but the kind of scream that meant she'd seen something exciting and couldn't contain herself. "Daddy, Daddy, come look." He ran to the living room to find her pressed against the glass wall, and on the other side, inches away, a deer was staring back at her. Not just any deer, a doe with 2 fawns, all 3 of them, examining Lily with curious, unafraid eyes. The doe's nose was almost touching the glass, her breath making small fog circles on the surface. "They're looking at us," Lily whispered. "They're looking at us like we're in a zoo." "I think we might be in a zoo. Their zoo." "Can I name them? Please, Daddy, can I name them?" "Sure, baby. What do you want to call them? The mommy is Beatrice. The babies are Prince and Princess." "How do you know which one is which?" "Prince is braver. See how he's closer to the glass. Princess is hiding behind her mom." The deer became daily visitors. Every morning and every evening they appeared at the glass walls to watch Marcus and Lily go about their routines. They brought friends, other deer, a family of raccoons that pressed their tiny hands against the glass like children at an aquarium, hawks that circled overhead, visible through the ceiling. "We're living in a nature documentary," Marcus told Mrs. Rodriguez during one of their weekly phone calls. He'd driven 40 minutes down the mountain to get enough cell signal for a conversation. "And Lily, how is she better?" Marcus's voice caught. "So much better, Carmen. She hasn't used her inhaler once. She runs around outside and doesn't get winded. It's like watching her come back to life." "Then it doesn't matter how hard the other things are. You'll figure those out." "What if I can't? What if this is too much? Marcus?" Mrs. Rodriguez's voice was firm. "You kept that child alive in a moldy apartment while working 2 jobs and grieving your wife. You figured out how to feed her on $20 a week. You are the strongest man I know. A glass house and some firewood is not going to defeat you." 1 month in, Marcus discovered the garden. He'd seen it before, the terraced beds behind the house, overgrown with weeds and neglect. But he'd been so focused on survival basics that he hadn't given it serious attention. Now, with the immediate crises of heat and water and food somewhat under control, he finally walked out to look at what Margaret had left behind. The beds were built from local stone, fitted together without mortar. Even overgrown, he could see the intelligence of their design, terraced to follow the natural slope of the hillside, oriented to catch maximum sun. A drip irrigation system, dry now but intact, connected to what looked like a rainwater collection tank. And the soil. Marcus knelt beside one of the beds and scooped up a handful of earth. It was dark as chocolate crumbly and alive with earthworms, and it smelled like nothing he'd ever experienced, rich and fertile and somehow hopeful. "Daddy, what are you doing?" Lily had followed him outside, hopeful, tucked under her arm as always. "Looking at this dirt." "That's a weird thing to look at." "It's special dirt, feel it." She knelt beside him and took some soil in her small hands. "It's soft and it smells good, like the forest floor. Your great-great-aunt Margaret spent 50 years building this soil, composting, adding nutrients, learning what it needed. This is what she left us, Lily, not just a house, a garden. Can we grow things? I think we have to try." They found Margaret's garden journals in the library, detailed records of every planting, every amendment, every success and failure over 5 decades. The journals became Marcus's Bible, his instruction manual for a world he'd never imagined entering. They started small, lettuce seeds in one bed, radishes in another. Marcus expected nothing. He had no experience with plants, no sense of whether he was doing things right or spectacularly wrong. The results came so fast they felt like magic. Within 4 days, green shoots were pushing through the soil. Within 2 weeks, they had lettuce leaves big enough to harvest. The radishes grew fat and red and perfect, nothing like the woody, bitter things Marcus remembered from grocery stores. "It's magic dirt," Lily declared, pulling a radish from the ground and biting into it with a satisfying crunch. "It's 50 years of love," Marcus corrected. 50 years of someone paying attention. By the 2nd month, they were eating entirely from the garden. Salads every night, vegetables roasted on the wood stove, herbs that made everything taste better than anything they'd ever bought in a store. Marcus's grocery trips became shorter and less frequent. Their weekly food budget dropped from what little they could afford to almost nothing. "We're actually doing this," he told Lily one evening as they sat by the fire full from a dinner they'd grown themselves. "We're actually living here." "I told you we could." "You did. You were right." "I'm always right. You should listen to me more." Marcus laughed a real laugh, the kind that came from somewhere deep, the kind he hadn't made in years. Lily grinned at him, firelight dancing in her eyes, and for a moment everything was perfect. Then she asked the question he'd been dreading. "Daddy, are we going to be okay when the money runs out?" The maintenance fund, that $15,000 that had seemed like a fortune, was disappearing faster than Marcus had anticipated. Property taxes, a new battery for the solar system, repairs to the well pump, groceries and gas, and all the small expenses that added up no matter how carefully he tracked them. He'd done the math. They had maybe 6 months before the fund was empty. "I'm working on it," he said. "What are you going to work on? There's no jobs up here." "I'll figure something out." "What if you can't?" "Lily." He pulled her close, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Do you remember what Mom used to say when things got hard?" "She said a lot of things when things got hard." "She said we're Thompsons, and Thompsons don't give up. We adapt. We find another way. We keep going until we make it." "And did we make it?" Did we make it when Mom was sick?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He took a moment to breathe, to choose his words carefully. "We made it through, baby. It wasn't the making it we wanted. We wanted Mom to get better, but we made it through. We're still here. We're still together, and we're still going." Lily was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire. "I miss her," she finally said. "I know. Me too." "Do you think she can see us?" "In the glass house." Marcus looked up at the ceiling, at the stars visible through transparent walls, at the vast darkness that might or might not contain his wife's spirit watching over them. "Yeah," he said, "I think she can see us. And I think she's proud of how hard we're trying." 3 months and the visitor arrived. Marcus was in the garden turning soil for spring planting when he heard an unfamiliar car engine struggling up their dirt road. His first instinct was wariness. Nobody came out here by accident. The road led nowhere except to their house. A blue Prius emerged from the oak grove, looking absurdly out of place on the rutted track. It parked beside Marcus's mud-splattered Honda, and a young woman stepped out. She was in her late 20s with short dark hair and paint-stained jeans, carrying a leather portfolio. But it was her expression that caught Marcus's attention, the way she was looking at the glass house with something beyond curiosity, something like recognition. "Excuse me," she called, approaching carefully. "Are you Marcus Thompson?" "That's me. Can I help you?" "My name is Sophia Reyes. I'm a doctoral student at UC Berkeley Architecture Program." She stopped, with her eyes still on the house. "I'm researching sustainable design from the 1970s, and I think this might be a James Holloway house." Marcus had read the name in Margaret's journals. James Holloway, Margaret's husband, the architect who designed the house and died before he could see it lived in. That's what the journals say. He built it and died in 1976. Sophia's face went pale. "Can you prove that? Do you have documentation?" "I have Margaret's journals, 50 years of them, and some photographs from the construction." "Oh my God." Sophia pressed a hand to her chest like she was having trouble breathing. "Oh my God, do you have any idea?" She stopped herself, visibly trying to regain composure. "Mr. Thompson, would it be possible for me to see the house and the journals? I can explain why this matters, but I need to see it first." Marcus hesitated. His instinct was to protect his home, to keep strangers away from the sanctuary they'd built. But something in Sophia's intensity, her barely contained excitement, made him curious. "I'll need to ask my daughter. This is her home, too." Lily, when consulted, was immediately enthusiastic. "A real architect is coming to look at our house, like on those TV shows where they look at old buildings and talk about history." "Something like that." "Can I show her my room? Can I show her the deer?" "We'll see." Sophia spent the next 4 hours examining every detail of the glass house with an intensity that bordered on reverence. She measured angles and photographed joints. She ran her hands along connections between glass and steel. She read sections of Margaret's journals with tears in her eye. "This joinery, she breathed, examining where a beam met a panel. "This level of craftsmanship is almost impossible to find anymore. Each connection was custom engineered for its specific location." "What does that mean?" Lily asked. She had been following Sophia around, asking questions about everything. "It means the man who built this house was a genius, and he loved it very much." Finally, Sophia sat down at Marcus's handmade table, a piece of furniture he'd built from fallen oak branches during their first month, and looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. "Mr. Thompson, I need to explain some things to you." "Okay." James Holloway wasn't just an architect. He was a visionary, decades ahead of his time. His philosophy of sustainable design buildings that work with nature instead of against it is only now becoming mainstream. I've gathered that from the journals. His surviving buildings are landmarks. The Marine County school he designed is worth $15 million. His Sacramento office complex sold 3 years ago for $42 million. Marcus's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. $42 million for a building. For a James Holloway building. There are only 6 in existence. Well, she glanced around the glass walls. 7 now that this one has been found. Found. Mr. Thompson, the architectural world has been searching for this house for almost 50 years. It was Holloway's final project, his masterpiece, but no one knew where it was located. Margaret Holloway never revealed it. She lived here in complete obscurity, protecting her husband's legacy. Marcus felt the blood draining from his face. What are you saying? Sophia reached into her portfolio and pulled out a magazine clipping yellowed and carefully preserved. It showed a house under construction, steel beams rising from a hillside, glass panels being installed by workers who looked like they were handling precious artifacts. The house in the photograph was unmistakably the one Marcus was sitting in. I'm saying, Sophia said carefully, that you're not living in a worthless glass house in the middle of nowhere. You're living in what might be the most important piece of residential architecture in American history. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Finally, Lily spoke. Does that mean we're famous? Sophia laughed, the tension breaking. It means your house is famous, or it will be once the architectural world finds out about this. Should the architectural world find out about this? Marcus asked. The question came out sharper than he intended, but a protective instinct was rising in him, the same instinct that had made him hesitant to let Sophia in multiplied by 100. That's entirely your decision. But Mr. Thompson, I have to be honest with you. Word is going to get out eventually. I can try to keep this quiet, but I'm a doctoral student. I have advisors, colleagues. Someone is going to talk. What happens when they do? People will want to see the house. Researchers, journalists, architecture students. Museums will want to acquire it. Collectors will want to buy it. It's not for sale. Everything is for sale at the right price. And Mr. Thompson, the right price for a James Holloway masterpiece could be astronomical. We're talking tens of millions of dollars, possibly more. Marcus looked at his daughter, who was watching him with wide eyes. Daddy, she whispered, that's a lot of money. Yeah, baby, it is. Would we have to leave if someone bought it? The question cut straight to Marcus's heart. This wasn't about money. It was about the home they had built together, the life they were learning to live, the sanctuary where his daughter could finally breathe. Nobody's buying anything, he said firmly. This is our home. We're not leaving. Sophia nodded slowly. I understand, and I respect that. But you should know what you have, Mr. Thompson. For protection, if nothing else. Protection from what? From people who might try to take it from you. That night after Sophia had left with promises to be discreet, Marcus sat by the fire while Lily slept. He was reading Margaret's journals again, but now the words held different weight. Year 23, he read. A man came today offering to buy the property. He represented some development company. I told him no. He said everything has a price. I told him he was wrong. Some things are beyond price. He laughed at me. I do not think he was a man who understood love. Marcus turned to a later entry. Year 45. Another offer. They come every few years now, these men in suits with their calculators and their certainty that money can buy anything. They look at James's house and see only what they could sell it for. They cannot see what it actually is. They cannot feel it. I used to pity them. Now I simply send them away. And then near the end, year 49, I am dying. The doctors say 6 months, maybe less. I have spent my life protecting what James built, learning from it, becoming worthy of it. Now I must let it go, but not to the developers, not to people who would tear it down or turn it into a museum where no one actually lives. It must go to someone who needs it, someone who will learn from it the way I did, someone the house can save. Marcus closed the journal and stared into the fire. Margaret Holloway had spent 50 years protecting this house. She had died hoping it would find the right person. And now developers were circling again. The woman named Sophia, however well-intentioned, had started a clock that Marcus couldn't stop. Word would get out. People would come. The question was whether Marcus could protect what Margaret had given him, or whether everything they'd built would be taken away. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he walked through the glass house in the moonlight, touching walls that had been touched by the hands of a man who died before Marcus was born, standing in spaces designed to teach people how to live. I don't know if you can hear me, he said quietly, addressing either Elena or Margaret or James or the house itself. But I promise you, I'm not giving up. Whatever comes, I'm not giving up. The glass walls held his words like a prayer. Outside, an owl hooted in the oak grove. and somewhere Marcus was certain someone was already making plans to take everything away. 2 weeks after Sophia's visit, the first letter arrived. Marcus found it in their mailbox at the bottom of the mountain, stuffed between a utility notice and a grocery store circular. The envelope was thick, expensive-looking, with a return address from something called Sterling Development Corporation in San Francisco. He opened it in the car, reading while Lily waited with the groceries. Dear Mr. Thompson, it has come to our attention that you are the current owner of a property of significant interest to our development consortium. We would like to discuss potential acquisition at your earliest convenience. Our initial offer of $500,000 represents a substantial premium over current assessed value and demonstrates our serious intent to reach a mutually beneficial agreement. Marcus read the letter twice. Then he folded it carefully, put it back in the envelope, and drove home without saying a word. That night, after Lily was asleep, he called Mrs. Rodriguez. $500,000, she repeated after he explained. Marcus, that's life-changing money. I know. You could buy a nice house somewhere, put money away for Lily's education, never worry about rent again. I know, but you're not going to take it. Carmen, you should see her here. You should see how she breathes, how she runs, how she laughs. I haven't heard her laugh like this since before Elena got sick. How do I put a price on that? You don't. That's the point. So what do? You tell them no, and then you prepare for what comes next. What comes next? Mrs. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. In my experience, men who offer $500,000 for something they want don't take no for an answer gracefully. Marcus wrote his response by hand on plain paper in simple words. Thank you for your interest. The property is not for sale. Please do not contact me again. He mailed it the next morning, and tried to forget about it. 3 weeks later, the county assessor arrived. Marcus was splitting wood when the white truck pulled up their dirt road. A man in khaki pants and a polo shirt stepped out, clipboard in hand, official county seal visible on his breast pocket. Mr. Thompson, I'm here for the property reassessment. What reassessment? I didn't request any reassessment. Routine procedure, sir. County does spot reassessments periodically to ensure properties are valued accurately. Something cold settled in Marcus's stomach. And you just happened to choose this property in the middle of nowhere. The assessor's smile didn't waver. Random selection, sir. Won't take long. It took 4 hours. The man measured everything, photographed. Everything, asked questions about improvements and systems and the condition of the well. He was professional and polite and absolutely thorough. 3 weeks after that, Marcus received the new assessment. His property taxes had increased from $800 a year to $4,200. They can't do that, Sophia said when Marcus called her in a panic. She had become something like a friend over the past weeks, visiting regularly to document the house while helping him understand what he was dealing with. A 5-fold increase based on a routine reassessment, that's not routine, that's targeted. Can I fight it? You can appeal, but appeals take months, and you have to pay the new amount while the appeal is pending. I don't have $4,200. I know. The next blow came 2 weeks later. Marcus was driving home from town when he noticed the orange signs posted along their access road. He stopped the car and got out to read one. Notice of road hazard. This road has been identified as structurally deficient by the County Department of Transportation. Property owners utilizing this access route are responsible for repairs. Estimated cost, $23,000. $23,000. To repair a road that had been perfectly fine for 50 years. A road that only led to one property, his. Marcus stood on the roadside for a long time, the notice crumpling in his fist. This wasn't coincidence. This was war. The fire marshal arrived the following Tuesday. Marcus was in the garden with Lily when the red truck appeared. A uniformed officer stepped out, young and nervous-looking, carrying a clipboard that seemed to be standard equipment for people delivering bad news. Mr. Thompson, I'm here to conduct a fire safety inspection of your wood-burning heating system. Since when does the county inspect private wood stoves? New policy, sir. Safety concerns with older installations. Marcus knew better than to argue. He let the man into the house, watched him examine the beautiful wood stove that had kept them warm all winter, waited for the verdict he already knew was coming. I'm sorry, sir. This installation doesn't meet current safety codes. I'm going to have to flag it as a potential hazard. What does that mean? It means you'll need to upgrade to a code-compliant system, or face potential condemnation proceedings. How much does a code-compliant system cost? Depends on the installer, probably $8,000 to $12,000. Marcus laughed. The sound was bitter and sharp. An upgrade that would destroy the house's historical integrity, that's convenient. The The fire marshal shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just doing my job, sir." "I'm sure you are. Who asked you to do it?" The young man didn't answer. He didn't have to. That night, Marcus spread all the papers across the kitchen table: the tax reassessment, the road repair notice, the fire marshal's report. Together, they represented over $70,000 in costs he couldn't pay, debts that would accumulate interest and penalties, pressure that would mount until he had no choice but to sell. "Daddy?" Lily appeared in the doorway, hopeful in her arms. "Why are you looking at papers?" "Just trying to figure some things out, baby." She walked over and climbed onto his lap, looking at the documents with serious eyes. "Are those bad papers?" "Some of them. Some people are trying to make things hard for us." "Why?" "Because they want our house, and we won't give it to them." "Can they take it away, even if we don't want to give it?" Marcus pulled her close, breathing in the clean scent of her hair, feeling the warmth of her small body against his chest. "Not if I can help it," he said. "Not ever." The phone call came at 6 in the morning 3 days later. Marcus was stoking the fire when his phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, but local. "Mr. Thompson, this is Sheriff's Deputy Williams. I'm calling about a complaint we received regarding your property." "What kind of complaint?" "Neighbor says there's been suspicious activity, strangers coming and going, possible drug activity." Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. "Deputy, my nearest neighbor is 5 miles away. There's no way anyone could see any activity at my property from any other property, and there's definitely no drug activity. I have an 8-year-old daughter." "I understand, sir. I'm required to follow up on all complaints. I'll need to stop by and take a look around." "When?" "Today, around noon." The deputy arrived precisely at noon. He was professional, thorough, and clearly uncomfortable with the assignment. He walked. The property, looked in the windows, checked the outbuildings. He found nothing because there was nothing to find. "I'm sorry to have wasted your time, Mr. Thompson," he said before leaving. "For what it's worth, I know a harassment campaign when I see one. Can you do anything about it? Not my department, but if I were you, I'd document everything. Keep records of every interaction, every notice, every inspection. You might need them." Marcus documented. He created a folder that grew thicker by the week: copies of every letter, photographs of every sign, notes from every phone call. The pattern was undeniable. Someone was systematically attacking them from every angle, using every lever of bureaucratic power available. And he had no way to fight back. Sophia arrived on a Saturday afternoon with news that changed everything. She burst through the door with an energy Marcus hadn't seen from her before, clutching her laptop like it contained nuclear codes. "I found him, she said. "I found out who's behind all of this." "Who, yeah, Victor Sterling, Sterling Development Corporation. He's been buying up properties throughout this valley for the past 3 years, assembling land for a massive resort development. Golf courses, spa facilities, luxury homes. Your property is right in the center of his planned project." "How do you know this?" "Property records are public. I traced every parcel he's acquired, every shell company he's used. It's all connected, Marcus. The tax reassessment, the road notice, the inspections. So they all started within weeks of Sterling's consortium taking an interest in this area." Marcus felt something cold and hard forming in his chest. "So this isn't random. This is targeted. It's systematic destruction. He's done it before. I found 3 other families in the area who faced the same pattern of pressure. All of them sold eventually. You're the only one holding out." "Why me?" Sophia looked at him with something like wonder in her eyes. "Because you're the only one who understands what you have. The other families, they just saw land, property, dollar signs. You see a home." Lily had been listening from the doorway. Now she stepped into the room, her face set with an expression Marcus recognized Elena's expression when she was angry. "He's trying to take our house," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, baby, he is." "He's a bully." "Yes, a very rich, very powerful bully." "Mommy always said bullies only win if you let them scare you. Are we scared?" Marcus looked at his daughter, at the fierce certainty in her eyes, at the way she stood with her shoulders squared and her chin up like a warrior princess from one of her fairy tales. "We're not scared," he said. "We're angry. There's a difference." "Good." She nodded sharply. "Then we fight?" The next morning, Marcus did something he had never done in his life. He hired a lawyer. Sophia had given him a name, David Chen, a property rights attorney in San Francisco who specialized in cases exactly like this. The consultation fee alone was $500, but Marcus scraped together the money from what remained of the maintenance fund. The video call lasted 2 hours. David Chen was in his 60s, with sharp eyes and a calm voice that suggested he had seen every trick in the book. "Mr. Thompson, what you're describing is textbook regulatory harassment. Sterling uses government processes as weapons because he knows most people can't afford to fight back." "Can I fight back?" "You can. The question is whether you can afford to." "I can't afford not to. If I don't fight, I lose everything." Chen nodded slowly. "Then let me tell you what we're dealing with. The property tax reassessment can be appealed. I'd estimate a 70% chance of getting it reduced significantly given that the increase appears to have no legitimate basis. Cost to fight approximately $8,000 in legal fees and expert witnesses." $8,000? The road repair notice is trickier. The county does have authority to require repairs on access roads, but the timing and the amount suggest bad faith. We might be able to challenge on procedural grounds. Cost another $5,000 to $7,000. I don't have that kind of money. I know, but here's what you do have: a story. David Sterling's consortium has been operating in the shadows using shell companies and political connections to avoid scrutiny. If the press got interested in what he's doing to you and to the other families he's pushed out, that's a different kind of pressure entirely. You're suggesting I go public. I'm suggesting that you consider all your options. Right now, Sterling holds all the cards. Going public might even the odds. Marcus thought about Lily, about the quiet life they had built, about the glass walls that offered no privacy from a world that might suddenly become very interested in them. What would going public mean? Journalists, cameras, attention, your daughter's face on television, your story becoming public property. That's exactly what we came here to escape. I understand, but sometimes the only way out is through. That night, Marcus sat by the fire with Margaret's journals reading entries he had read a dozen times before. Year 37, a reporter found me today. Someone from an architecture magazine wanting to know about James's work. I sent her away. The house is not a story to be told. It is a life to be lived. Some things must be protected from the world's appetite for consuming everything it touches. Marcus understood Margaret's impulse to protect, but Margaret had been alone. She had been choosing privacy over intrusion. Marcus was choosing between privacy and losing everything. "What would you do?" he asked the empty room. "If you had a daughter depending on you, if staying hidden meant being destroyed?" The house offered no answer, but somewhere in the glass walls and the warm floors and the light that seemed to breathe with the day's rhythms, Marcus felt something like permission. Margaret had protected the house by hiding it. Maybe it was time to protect it by showing it. The decision was made for him 3 days later. Sophia called at 7 in the morning, her voice tight with urgency. "Marcus, you need to see something. Check your email, now." He opened his laptop and found a link to the San Francisco Chronicle's website. The headline made his blood run cold. "Hidden treasure, single father's worthless inheritance may be worth tens of millions." The article was detailed. It named Lily, named the property. It described the glass house as the lost masterpiece of sustainable architecture pioneer James Holloway. It speculated about the property's potential value. It mentioned the growing pressure from development interests that the owner was facing. "Who talked?" Marcus demanded. "I don't know, but Marcus, this wasn't supposed to happen. I've been so careful about—" "Someone talked. Someone from your program, your university somewhere, and now the whole world knows." "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't protect my daughter from reporters camped outside our house." He hung up without saying goodbye. Then he went to find Lily, who was still asleep, who didn't know yet that their quiet life had just been exploded into 1,000 pieces. The news vans arrived by noon. Marcus counted 7 of them parked at the entrance to their dirt road, cameras and reporters and satellite dishes transforming their private sanctuary into a media circus. He had taken Lily to the back of the house as far from the windows as possible, where they sat together on the floor playing cards while the world demanded access to their story. "Why are all those people here?" Lily asked, her voice smaller than usual. "They want to know about the house, about us." "Why?" "Because someone told them our house might be worth a lot of money." Lily considered this while studying her cards. "Is it worth a lot of money?" "I don't know exactly. Maybe." "Would we be rich?" "Only if we sold it, and we're not selling." "Good." She laid down a pair of 3s. "I don't want to be rich. I want to be home." The phone rang every few minutes. Numbers Marcus didn't recognize. Requests for interviews, for exclusive access, for comment on the story that had suddenly made them famous. He turned off his phone and unplugged the landline. By evening, the crowd outside had grown. Security guards hired by some network or another had blocked their dirt road entirely, preventing Marcus from leaving even if he wanted to. They were trapped in their glass house, visible to anyone with a telephoto lens, prisoners of transparency. "Daddy Lily said as they ate dinner by candlelight. The curtains Marcus had improvised, blocking the worst of the external view. "I'm scared." It was the first time she had admitted it since they moved here. The first time she had let her brave face slip. Marcus pulled her close. "I know, baby. Me too." "What are we gonna do?" "I don't know yet, but I promise you whatever happens, we're in this together. Nobody takes you away from me. Nobody." "Promise?" "Promise." Outside, the lights of the media camp turned the night artificial. Inside, the glass house held its breath and waited. Somewhere in San Francisco, Victor Sterling was reading the same article and making calculations. Somewhere in Berkeley, Sophia Reyes was crying with guilt and fear for what she might have caused. And somewhere in the glass walls of a house built by a genius and protected by a widow and now inhabited by a father who had nothing left to lose, something was shifting. The battle for the glass house was about to begin. The siege lasted 4 days. 4 days of cameras and shouted questions and strangers camping on their dirt road like the glass house was a tourist attraction. 4 days of Marcus keeping Lily inside, playing games and reading books and pretending the world outside didn't exist. 4 days of phones ringing and emails flooding and the quiet life they had built crumbling around them. On the morning of the 5th day, Victor Sterling came in person. Marcus heard the commotion, first voices outside, rising in excitement, the sound of expensive car doors closing. Then a knock on their glass door, polite but firm. He opened it to find a man in a tailored suit standing on his doorstep, silver-haired and confident, flanked by 2 lawyers in matching ties. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Victor Sterling. I believe we have some things to discuss." Marcus didn't move from the doorway. "I have nothing to discuss with you." "I think you do. May I come in?" "No." Sterling smiled, the expression of a man who was rarely told no, and found it almost amusing when it happened. "I understand your hostility. The media situation must be very stressful, especially with a young daughter. I might be able to help with that. The media situation exists because of you." "Does it? I didn't write that article, Mr. Thompson. I didn't tell the Chronicle about your property or its potential value. The architectural community did that all on its own." "You created the conditions. You sent your inspectors and your assessors and your fire marshals. You thought you could pressure me into selling quietly. When that didn't work, someone made sure the story got out." Sterling's smile didn't waver, but something flickered behind his eyes. "You're more perceptive than I expected. Most people in your situation would be too overwhelmed to see clearly. What do you want?" "The same thing I've always wanted. Your property." "But the landscape has changed, Mr. Thompson. Before you were sitting on land that nobody wanted. Now you're sitting on a potential gold mine. I'm here to make you an offer that reflects that new reality." He reached into his jacket and produced an envelope, holding it out like a peace offering. $5 million, cash. You can be packed and gone by the end of the week, and this entire circus goes away. Marcus didn't take the envelope. "You offered me $500,000 2 months ago." "Circumstances change." "What changed is you realized what I have. What changed is you're scared that I'll find out exactly how much it's worth, and you won't be able to afford it anymore." Sterling's smile finally faded. "I'm trying to help you, Mr. Thompson. You're a single father with no resources, no connections, no way to fight what's coming. The tax assessments alone will bankrupt you within 6 months. The road repairs will take another year of your life in legal battles you can't afford. And the attention..." He gestured at the news vans visible through the glass walls. "The attention will never stop, not now. Your daughter will grow up in a fishbowl every moment of her life, documented and dissected by strangers." "Is that a threat?" "It's a prediction. I've been doing this for 30 years, Mr. Thompson. I know how these situations end. The holdouts always lose eventually. The only question is how much pain they endure before they accept the inevitable." From somewhere behind Marcus Lily's voice rang out clear and strong. "My daddy's not a holdout, and we're not leaving." Sterling looked past Marcus to where Lily stood in the hallway, hopeful clutched to her chest, her chin raised in defiance. "This must be Lily. I've heard a lot about you." "I haven't heard anything about you, but I don't think I like you." "Lily..." Marcus's voice carried a warning. "It's quite all right," Sterling said. "Children should speak their minds. It shows character." He crouched down to Lily's eye level, his voice softening into something that almost sounded genuine. Lily, do you understand what's happening here? Your father is in trouble. Serious trouble. I'm offering him a way out. He doesn't need a way out. He needs you to leave us alone. But I can give you things. A beautiful new house, a swimming pool, the best schools, everything a little girl could want. Lily stared at him with an intensity that made Sterling actually lean back slightly. My mommy's buried in Oakland. This house taught me how to breathe again. My daddy learned how to smile here. You can't buy any of that with a swimming pool. Sterling straightened slowly, his expression unreadable. He looked at Marcus for a long moment. You've raised quite a daughter, Mr. Thompson. I know. She gets that fire from her mother, I assume. She gets it from herself. She's the strongest person I know. Sterling nodded once, tucking the envelope back into his jacket. My offer stands. $5 million, good for 30 days. After that, the gloves come off. Whatever happens next, remember that I gave you a chance. He turned and walked back to his car, his lawyers trailing behind him. The news cameras captured every step. When the black SUV had disappeared down the dirt road, Marcus closed the door and sank onto the nearest chair, his legs suddenly weak. Daddy? Lily was beside him instantly, her small hand on his arm. Are you okay? Yeah, baby, just tired. You're not going to take his money, are you? No. Good. I meant what I said, about Mommy and the breathing and everything. Marcus pulled her into his lap, holding her tight. I know you did. You were very brave. He scared me a little. He scared me too. But we're not going to let him win. No, Marcus said, feeling something harden inside him, something that had been soft and uncertain for too long. We're not going to let him win. The call from the James Holloway Foundation came 2 days later. Marcus almost didn't answer. He had stopped answering unknown numbers entirely, letting everything go to voicemail, drowning in messages from journalists and curiosity seekers, and people who claimed to be long-lost relatives interested in reconnecting now that he was apparently sitting on millions. But this number was different. It came with a name on the caller ID, Maria Santos, Executive Director. Mr. Thompson, please don't hang up. I'm not a journalist, and I'm not trying to buy your property. I'm calling because I might be able to help. Help how? The James Holloway Foundation was established after James's death to preserve examples of sustainable architecture. We've spent 50 years protecting buildings like yours from exactly the kind of pressure you're facing. How do you know what kind of pressure I'm facing? I've been following your story, and I know Victor Sterling's tactics. He destroyed 2 Holloway-adjacent buildings in the 80s before our foundation was strong enough to fight back. I won't let him destroy another. Something in her voice, a fierceness that matched his own exhausted determination, made Marcus pay attention. What are you proposing? A partnership, legal protection, financial support, historic designation that would make development impossible. The foundation would help you establish the house as an educational center, sharing James's principles with future generations while you continue living there as its steward. I don't want to turn my home into a museum. It wouldn't be a museum. It would be a living demonstration proof that sustainable design isn't just theory, it's a way of life. You and Lily would remain the heart of it. The house would still be your home, but it would also be protected in ways that Sterling can't touch. What's the catch? Maria laughed softly. The catch is that you'd have to share it sometimes. Visitors, students, researchers. Not constantly, not invasively, but regularly. Your private sanctuary would become something more public. That's a real cost, and I won't pretend otherwise. Marcus thought about Lily, about her fierce speech to Sterling, about the way she talked to the deer through the glass walls every morning. Can I think about it? Of course, but Mr. Thompson time is not on your side. Sterling's 30-day deadline is already ticking. Once that expires, he'll escalate, and his escalations can get very ugly very fast. I know. I hope you do. I've watched families lose everything because they waited too long to accept help. Please don't be one of them. After she hung up, Marcus sat with the phone in his hands for a long time, sharing the house, opening their sanctuary to strangers, letting the world into the space where Lily had learned to breathe again. Everything in him recoiled from the idea. They had come here to escape, to heal, to build something private and protected from a world that had already taken so much from them. But they had also come here to survive, and survival sometimes required sacrifices. What are you thinking about? Lily had appeared beside him, silent as a cat. She did that sometimes, materialized out of nowhere, with questions that cut straight to the heart of things. A woman called, from a foundation that protects old buildings. She wants to help us. Help us how? Make it so the bad man can't take our house away. But we'd have to share it sometimes. Let people come and learn about it. Lily considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important questions. Like a school. Sort of. Like a school where people learn how to live in a way that's good for the earth. That doesn't sound bad. It would mean less privacy, people coming and going, our home not being just ours anymore. But it would still be our home. Yes. And we wouldn't have to leave. No. Lily nodded, slowly processing. The house taught us things, Daddy. About light and growing food and being part of nature instead of fighting it. Maybe it wants to teach other people too. Houses don't want things, baby. This one does. I can feel it sometimes, like it's alive. She looked up at him with Elena's eyes serious and certain. I think we should let it teach. To me, the meeting with the foundation happened 4 days later. Maria Santos flew up from San Francisco with a team of lawyers and preservation specialists. They spread documents across Marcus's handmade table explaining options and implications and legal mechanisms that made his head spin. Historic landmark designation, conservation easements, educational programming frameworks, tax structures that would eliminate the burden Sterling was using as a weapon. We can file for emergency historic designation based on the house's architectural significance, one of the lawyers explained. Once that's in place, any development plans for the surrounding area become exponentially more complicated. Sterling's resort project would face years of environmental and cultural impact reviews. What about the taxes, the road repairs, all the costs they've been piling on? We'd cover those immediately. The foundation has resources specifically for preservation emergencies. You wouldn't owe another dime until the legal situation stabilizes. And in exchange, Maria leaned forward, her expression earnest. In exchange, you become the house's steward rather than simply its owner. You'd host educational programs maybe once or twice a month. Students, architects, families interested in sustainable living. The house would have visiting hours, but you'd control when and how. Your privacy would be protected within reasonable limits. What about Lily? Lily would be part of it as much or as little as she wants. Some children in these situations become ambassadors for preservation. Others prefer to stay in the background. That would be entirely up to you. Marcus looked around at his home. The glass walls, the warm floors, the garden visible through the transparent surfaces. This was his sanctuary. This was where Lily had healed. This was where he had learned finally that survival could look like more than just not dying. Could he share that? Could he open these walls to strangers and still feel safe? I need to talk to my daughter. Of course, take the time you need, but Mr. Thompson, I know, the clock is ticking. That night, Marcus and Lily sat by the fire, the foundation document spread between them. They want to help us keep the house, Marcus explained. But it would mean changes, people visiting, our home becoming something more than just ours. Would the deer still come? I think so. The foundation people would be on the other side of the property. The deer wouldn't even notice them. What about our garden? Would strangers walk through our garden? Only if we let them. We'd get to decide what parts of our life stay private. Lily was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire. When she finally spoke, her voice was small but steady. Mommy used to say that the best things in life are the things we share. Remember, when I didn't want to share my Halloween candy and she told me that sharing makes good things better, not worse? I remember. Maybe the house is like Halloween candy. Maybe sharing it makes it better, not worse. Marcus smiled despite himself. That's a pretty big maybe. But Daddy, what's the other choice? The bad man takes everything and we have nothing. That's one possibility. Or we fight him alone and maybe we win, but maybe we lose. Also a possibility. Or we let people help us and we keep our home and maybe some good things happen that we can't even imagine yet. Put that way, the choice seemed obvious, but Marcus had learned to distrust obvious choices. They usually came with hidden costs. What if I say yes and it's a mistake? What if we lose the thing that made this place special? Lily reached over and took his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his. Mrs. Rodriguez told me something before we left Oakland. She said that when you're drowning, you don't refuse a life preserver because it might have splinters. You grab it and deal with the splinters later. Carmen is a wise woman. I know, so are you, Daddy. You're just scared to believe it. Marcus looked at his daughter, this small, fierce person who had endured more loss and upheaval in her 8 years than most people faced in a lifetime, and felt something shift in his chest. He had spent so long trying to protect her, to shield her, to carry every burden so she wouldn't have to, but somewhere along the way she had become the one carrying him. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, what? Okay, let's grab the life preserver. Lily's face split into a grin. Really? Really? But we do this together, every decision, every boundary, every rule about what we share and what we keep private. You and me making choices as a team. Like partners. Like partners. She threw her arms around him, squeezing tight. We're going to be okay, Daddy. I know we are. Yeah, baby, I think maybe we are. The next morning, Marcus called Maria Santos. I'm in, but I have conditions. Name them. Lily has veto power over anything that affects her daily life. If she's uncomfortable with something, it doesn't happen. Period. Done. I want it in writing that this is our home first and educational center second. If there's ever a conflict between those roles, home wins. Absolutely. That's essential to the Foundation's philosophy anyway. And I want Sterling to know. I want him to understand that he lost. Not because I want to gloat, but because I want him to stop. Maria was quiet for a moment. Mr. Thompson, men like Victor Sterling don't stop because they've lost one battle. They regroup and try again from a different angle. Then at least he'll know that I'm not afraid of him anymore. That matters. Yes, she said softly. It does. The paperwork took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of legal documents and foundation agreements and historic designation applications. 2 weeks of phone calls and video conferences and more signatures than Marcus had ever written in his life. And then on a Tuesday morning in late May, it was done. The glass house was officially designated a California Historic Landmark. The conservation easement was in place. The Foundation's legal team had filed challenges to every inflated assessment and spurious repair demand Sterling's people had manufactured. The siege was over. Marcus stood in the garden that afternoon watching Lily chase butterflies through the vegetable beds and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the exhausted numbness he had mistaken for peace in the darkest days after Elena's death. Not the hollow quiet of simply having survived another crisis. Real peace, the kind that came from knowing you had fought for something and won. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia, who had been calling constantly since the Chronicle article, desperate to apologize, to help to make things right. Heard the news. I'm so happy for you. Can we talk? Marcus typed back, come for dinner Friday. Bring wine. We're celebrating. He was putting the phone away when he noticed the car. A black SUV parked at the entrance to their dirt road. Just sitting there, engine running. Victor Sterling's car. Marcus watched for a long moment, his heart rate rising despite the legal protections now surrounding his home. Sterling wasn't doing anything illegal. The road was public property, but the message was clear. This isn't over. I'm still here. I'm still watching. The SUV sat there for nearly an hour. Then finally it turned around and drove away. But Marcus knew what it meant. The Foundation's lawyers had won this round. The historic designation was a powerful shield. Sterling's development plans were effectively dead. But men like Victor Sterling didn't accept defeat gracefully. They nursed grudges. They waited. They found new angles of attack that no one saw coming. The glass house was safe for now, but for how long? As Marcus walked back toward the house, Lily ran up to him, breathless and grinning, a monarch butterfly briefly landing on her outstretched finger before fluttering away. Did you see that, Daddy? Did you see? I saw, baby. This is the best day ever. Marcus smiled, pushing down his unease. She was right. This was a victory. They had earned it. Whatever came next, they would face it together. But somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered that the hardest part might still be ahead. The appraiser arrived 3 weeks later. Margaret Torres knocked on their glass door on a morning when the house was full of light, and Lily was teaching Sophia how to identify different types of butterflies in the garden. Mr. Thompson, I'm here to conduct the formal appraisal. The Foundation requested it as part of the historic designation documentation. Marcus had been expecting her. The Foundation needed an official valuation for their records, and Margaret Torres was apparently the best in the business. Come in? She spent 6 hours examining the house with an intensity that made Sophia's previous documentation look casual. She measured angles and photographed details and consulted reference materials on her laptop. She reviewed Margaret Holloway's journals with growing amazement. She examined the signature etched in the glass like it was a religious artifact. When she finally sat down with Marcus, her expression was unlike anything he had expected. Mr. Thompson, in 30 years of appraising extraordinary properties, I have never seen anything like this. What do you mean? I mean that every assumption I brought with me this morning has been systematically demolished. This isn't just a James Holloway house. This is the James Holloway house, his final statement, his masterpiece preserved in essentially perfect condition with documentation that rivals museum collections. What does that mean in numbers? Margaret Torres took a deep breath. Conservative estimate accounting for the historic designation and the educational programming restrictions, $80 million. The number hung in the air like something physical. Marcus heard Lily gasp from the doorway where she'd been listening. He heard Sophia whisper something that sounded like a prayer. 80 million, he repeated. Are you sure? If anything, I'm being conservative. A truly motivated collector, someone who wanted this property badly enough to meet any price, might pay significantly more. The combination of architectural significance, historical documentation, and the story surrounding it makes this genuinely unique. There's nothing else like it anywhere in the world. Marcus sat very still, trying to make the number mean something. $80 million. More money than his parents had earned in their entire lives combined. More than he would earn in 1,000 years of security guard shifts and construction work. And it was sitting in his living room. The foundation, he said carefully. They knew this when they offered to help us. Certainly, the Holloway Foundation understands exactly what they're protecting. That's why they moved so quickly when they learned your property was under threat. But they didn't tell me. They didn't say it was worth this much. Would it have mattered? Marcus thought about the question. Would knowing the specific number have changed his decisions? Would he have been more likely to sell or less? Would he have trusted the foundation more or suspected them of ulterior motives? I don't know, he admitted. That's probably why they didn't mention it. Some things are better discovered after the decision has been made on other grounds. After Margaret Torres left, Marcus sat alone in the glass house while Lily and Sophia talked excitedly in the garden. He could hear their voices through the transparent walls, fragments of conversation about architectural history and butterfly species, and what it meant to be the guardians of something so valuable. $80 million. He thought about Elena, about the hospital bills that had destroyed them, about the cost of treatments that hadn't worked. What would she say if she could see him now? Her husband, the man who had counted every penny and clipped every coupon and learned to feed their family on nothing, suddenly sitting in a house worth more than most countries' annual budgets. It's funny, he said quietly to no one, or maybe to her, wherever she was. All that time we spent worrying about money, all those sleepless nights trying to figure out how to make ends meet. And now... He looked around at the walls that had taught him about light, at the floors that had taught him about warmth, at the garden, where his daughter had learned to breathe again. And now I know that the most valuable thing we ever had wasn't anything we could have bought or sold. It was each other. It was this. It was home. From the garden, Lily's laugh rang out pure and free and full of joy. Marcus smiled. $80 million was just a number. What he had in this glass house was beyond price, and nothing, not Victor Sterling, not the media circus, not any force in the world, was going to take it away from him. The news of the $80 million appraisal spread faster than wildfire. Within 48 hours, Marcus's phone was ringing again, with calls from every major news outlet in the country. The story had evolved from interesting architectural discovery to single father hits lottery without buying a ticket. Headlines screamed from every screen and newspaper, homeless father now worth $80 million. Glasshouse miracle. The inheritance that changed everything. Marcus declined every interview request. He had learned his lesson about media attention, but one call he couldn't ignore came from an unexpected source. Victor Sterling's personal attorney. Mr. Thompson, my client, would like to meet with you privately. No lawyers, no press, just two men having a conversation. Why would I agree to that? Because Mr. Sterling believes you've won. He wants to concede gracefully and discuss how you might coexist going forward. The development project is dead. He accepts that. But his consortium still owns significant property in your area. It would benefit everyone to find a way to work together rather than continue fighting. Marcus's instinct was to refuse. Everything about Victor Sterling had been hostile, manipulative, designed to destroy him. Why would that suddenly change? But something Elena used to say echoed in his mind. Always listen to your enemies when they want to surrender. That's when you learn who they really are. Where and when? Tomorrow, noon, the Mendocino Hotel, lunch on Mr. Sterling's account. Marcus spent the night wrestling with the decision. He called Mrs. Rodriguez, who warned him it could be a trap. He called Sophia, who said Sterling probably wanted something and was willing to play nice to get it. He called David Chen, his lawyer, who advised bringing legal representation regardless of what Sterling had requested. But in the end, Marcus went alone. He walked into the Mendocino Hotel dining room at exactly noon and found Victor Sterling already seated at a corner table, looking smaller and older than Marcus remembered from their confrontation at the glass house. Mr. Thompson, thank you for coming. Marcus sat across from him, leaving his menu untouched. "What do you want, Sterling?" "Straight to business. I respect that." Sterling set down his own menu and folded his hands on the table. "I want to apologize." Of all the things Marcus had expected, an apology was not among them. "You want to apologize?" "I do, not because I think you'll forgive me, you have no reason to, but because I've had 3 weeks to think about what happened, and I've come to some conclusions I'm not proud of." "What conclusions?" Sterling was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant. "I told you once that I grew up poor. My father lost our farm when I was 12. I watched strangers carry our furniture out of our house while my mother cried. I swore that day that I would never be powerless again." "I remember." "What I didn't tell you is what happened to my father after we lost the farm. He fell apart, drank himself to death within 5 years. My mother worked 3 jobs trying to hold us together, and it killed her too, cancer, but really exhaustion. I was on my own by 17. Marcus said nothing. He hadn't expected this. "For 40 years, I've been acquiring property building developments, accumulating power. I told myself I was creating something to jobs economic growth progress. But really, I was just trying to make sure no one could ever do to me what was done to my family." "And what does any of that have to do with me?" Sterling met his eyes. "You stood there in your glass house with nothing except your daughter and your stubbornness, and you told me no. And your daughter, that little girl, looked at me like I was a monster, and I realized I am a monster. I became the exact thing that destroyed my family, the person with power crushing people without it." "That's a nice speech. What do you actually want?" Sterling smiled sadly. "Direct. I appreciate that. What I want is simple. I want to withdraw from this area entirely. Sell off my holdings, cancel the development project, leave you and your neighbors in peace. But I want to do it in a way that benefits the community rather than destabilizes it." "What does that mean?" "It means I'd like to donate a significant portion of my holdings to the foundation that's protecting your property. Let them create conservation easements, protect the land, ensure nothing gets developed here for generations. I won't make a profit. I'll probably take a loss, but it's the right thing to do." Marcus stared at him, trying to find the angle, the manipulation, the hidden cost. "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm 62 years old, Mr. Thompson. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes and no one to leave it to. My wife died 6 years ago. We never had children. I've spent my entire life building an empire, and I've finally realized that empires are just elaborate ways of being alone. So you want redemption? I want to do one good thing before I die. Just one thing I can look back on and know was right." He paused. "Your daughter reminded me of my mother. That fierce look in her eyes. That refusal to be intimidated. My mother had that same fire. I spent 40 years forgetting what it looked like." They sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Marcus spoke. "If you're serious about this talk to Maria Santos at the Holloway Foundation, make your donation through proper channels. Let the lawyers handle the details." "I will." "And Sterling, if this is some kind of long game, some trick I can't see, know that I will spend the rest of my life making sure it doesn't work." "It's not a trick, Mr. Thompson. It's a surrender, and possibly the first honest thing I've done in 40 years. Marcus stood, leaving his napkin on the table. "I hope that's true. For your sake." He walked out without looking back. The donation came through 2 weeks later. Victor Sterling transferred property worth over $12 million to the James Holloway Foundation with specific instructions that it be used to create a protected wilderness corridor surrounding the Glass House property. The announcement made news, though Sterling declined all interviews. The story shifted again. Now it wasn't just about Marcus and his miraculous inheritance. It was about redemption, about enemies becoming unexpected allies, about the power of one person's courage to change hearts. Sophia completed her doctoral thesis on the Glass House, earning the highest honors her program had ever awarded. She dedicated it to the Thompson family, who taught me that architecture is not about buildings, it's about how we choose to live. Tom Morrison, the rancher, who had been facing bankruptcy, became a partner in the foundation's educational programming. His sustainable farming practices, dismissed for decades as old-fashioned, were now recognized as cutting-edge regenerative agriculture. The valley that Victor Sterling had planned to transform into a luxury resort became instead a model for sustainable community development. Farmers' markets flourished. Ecotourism brought visitors who wanted to learn, not just como consume. Property values rose in ways that benefited existing residents rather than pushing them out. And through it all, Marcus and Lily continued living in their glass house. 1 year after the appraisal, the Glass House Center for Sustainable Living held its official opening ceremony. 200 people gathered on the property, architecture students, environmental activists, journalists, neighbors, foundation representatives, and a small woman who had flown up from Oakland specifically for the occasion. Mrs. Rodriguez stood at the edge of the crowd, tears streaming down her face as Marcus took the small stage that had been set up in the garden. "A year and a half ago," he began, "my daughter and I were living in a one-bedroom apartment in Oakland. I worked 2 jobs that paid nothing. My daughter had asthma from the mold in our walls. We were invisible, just 2 more people falling through the cracks of a system that doesn't care about people like us." He paused, looking out at the faces watching him. "Someone told me I was inheriting a worthless glass house. Everyone I talked to said moving here was crazy. They said it was impractical, impossible, a mistake we'd regret." He smiled. They were wrong. Lily stood at the front of the crowd, hopeful tucked under her arm as always, grinning up at her father. "This house taught us things we didn't know we needed to learn. It taught us about light and warmth and growing food. It taught us that you can need less and have more at the same time. It taught us that sometimes the things the world dismisses as worthless are actually priceless." Marcus's voice thickened with emotion. "My wife Elena used to say that God hides blessings in strange packages. She was right. This house was the strangest package I've ever received, and it saved our lives." He gestured toward the crowd. "Now we want to share what we've learned. Not because we figured everything out, we haven't, but because the sharing is the point. James Holloway built this house to teach people how to live differently. Margaret Holloway spent 50 years protecting that vision. Now it's our turn to pass it on." Lily joined him on stage, and the crowd erupted in applause. "I'm Lily," she said into the microphone, her voice clear and confident. "I'm 9 now. When we moved here, I was sick all the time, and I missed my mommy a lot. The house helped me feel better. The garden helped. The deer and the butterflies and everything helped." She held up hopeful. "My mom gave me this rabbit when I was born. She said to always have hope, even when things are hard. I think this house is like hopeful. It looks weird from outside, but inside it's full of love." She handed the microphone back to Marcus, who had to take a moment to compose himself. "The Glass House Center isn't a museum," he said finally. "It's proof that another way of life is possible. Sustainable, beautiful, connected to the natural world. James Holloway built this vision 50 years ago. We're just here to keep it alive." The applause lasted a long time. Afterward, Mrs. Rodriguez found Marcus by the garden beds watching Lily give an impromptu tour to a group of children who had come with their parents. "Look at her," Mrs. Rodriguez said softly. "That confidence, that joy. A year ago, she was afraid to breathe too deeply. I know, I still can't quite believe it sometimes. Your Elena would be so proud of both of you." Marcus nodded, his throat tight. "I hope so." "She is, I'm certain of it." Mrs. Rodriguez squeezed his arm. "You know what I see when I look at you now, a man who stopped running. A man who stood still long enough to find out who he really is. Who am I? A father, a teacher, a protector of beautiful things." She smiled. "Someone who knows that the most valuable treasures aren't the ones you can count." That night, after all the guests had left and the valley had settled into its familiar quiet, Marcus and Lily climbed the hillside above their house to watch the sunset. It had become a ritual over the past year, this evening walk to the place where they could see their home from above, watch the light change. As day became night, to count the first stars as they appeared. "Daddy," Lily said, leaning against his shoulder, "do you think we'll live here forever?" "I don't know about forever, baby, but for as long as we can." "What about when I grow up? Will I have to leave?" "You can do whatever you want when you grow up. Go to college, travel the world, have adventures. But this place will always be here. This will always be home." "Good. Because I want to be an architect like Mr. Holloway. I want to build houses that teach people things." Marcus smiled. "That's a beautiful dream." "It's not a dream. It's a plan. Dreams are things you wish for. Plans are things you work on." "Who taught you that?" "Mommy. She said dreams don't come true by themselves. You have to build them like houses." Marcus pulled his daughter close, watching the glass house glow in the fading light. Through its transparent walls, he could see into every space they had made their own. The kitchen where breakfast happened every morning. The reading nook where Lily did her homework. The garden heavy with summer vegetables. "You know what I've learned," he said softly. "I spent so many years thinking that success meant having money. That security meant owning things. That happiness came from getting what you wanted. What do you think now? Now I think success is waking up excited about the day ahead. Security is having people who love you, and happiness is knowing that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Are we where we're supposed to be, Daddy? Marcus looked at his daughter, at her mother's eyes shining in a face that was all her own, at the fierce and gentle spirit that had survived more loss than any child should bear and emerged stronger for it. Yeah, baby. I think we finally are. The documentary premiered at Sundance 6 months later. The Glass House: A Father's Promise told their story from beginning to end, the Oakland apartment. The unexpected inheritance, the struggle, and the triumph and the transformation. It won 3 awards and received a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, reporters crowded around Marcus and Lily on the red carpet. Mr. Thompson, what message do you hope people take from your story? Marcus thought for a moment before answering. That it's never too late to start over. That the things we value most aren't things at all. That sometimes the best thing you can do for your children isn't protect them from struggle, it's show them how to face it. Lily, what's your favorite thing about living in the glass house? Lily grinned the same grin she'd had the first day they arrived. I can see the stars from my bedroom every single night. Mommy's up there somewhere watching us. And the house lets me see her. The room went quiet. Then someone started clapping, and the applause spread until it filled the entire theater. 5 years later, Marcus stood in the garden on a June morning watching the sunrise paint the glass walls gold and rose. So much had changed since that first desperate drive up the mountain. Lily was 13 now, tall and confident, already making plans for college and the architecture career she was determined to pursue. The Glass House Center had hosted thousands of visitors and been featured in dozens of publications. The Valley community had become a model for sustainable development studied by urban planners from around the world, and Marcus had found something he never expected to find again: love. Sarah Chen had come to the Glass House as a journalist and writing a feature about sustainable communities for a national magazine. She stayed 3 days, fell in love with the house and its inhabitants, and came back a month later for follow-up research that had nothing to do with her article. They married in the garden 2 years later, surrounded by friends and neighbors and the deer who still visited every morning to watch human life unfold through transparent walls. Now Sarah was inside making breakfast, and Lily was still asleep in her room with the view of the sunrise, and Marcus was standing exactly where he had stood on that first morning, amazed, overwhelmed, uncertain of everything except the light. Hey, Sarah appeared beside him, coffee cup in hand. Penny for your thoughts. I was thinking about how strange life is, how you can go from having nothing to having everything without ever changing the thing that matters most. What matters most? Who you love, how you treat them, what you're willing to sacrifice to protect them. Sarah leaned into his shoulder. Elena would like what you've built here. I hope so. I still talk to her sometimes. Tell her about Lily's latest obsession or the crazy thing that happened at the center. Is that weird? It's beautiful, that's what it is. They stood together as the sun climbed higher, warming the glass walls, waking the house into another day of light and life and purpose. Daddy? Lily's voice came from the doorway, thick with sleep but already carrying the energy that never seemed to leave her. Why are you two being mushy outside? Breakfast is going to get cold. We're having a moment, Sarah called back. Join us. Lily padded out in her pajamas, still clutching hopeful. The rabbit was threadbare now, patched and repatched, but she refused to let him go. Is this about the foundation people coming today? She asked. Because I already have my tour speech memorized. It's not about that. It's about being grateful. Grateful for what? Marcus looked at his daughter, at his wife, at the house that had saved them all. Everything, baby. Absolutely everything. The foundation representatives arrived at 10 o'clock that morning with news that would mark another turning point. Maria Santos stepped out of her car with an expression Marcus had learned to read over 5 years of partnership excitement barely contained. Beneath professional composure. Marcus, we need to talk. Something big has happened. They gathered in the main room, sunlight streaming through the glass walls as Maria spread documents across the table. The United Nations has designated the Glass House Center as a World Heritage Site for Sustainable Architecture. It's only the 3rd residential building in the Americas to receive this designation. Lily gasped. Sarah grabbed Marcus's hand. Marcus himself felt his legs go weak. World Heritage Site, he repeated. That means... It means international protection, permanent recognition, resources and attention from preservation organizations worldwide. It also means... Maria smiled. That the house James Holloway built is now officially recognized as one of humanity's cultural treasures, equal in significance to the pyramids, to Machu Picchu, to the Taj Mahal. That's insane, Lily whispered. "Our house is like the pyramids. Your house changed how people think about buildings and nature and sustainability. It inspired a movement. It proved something important about how humans can live. That's exactly what World Heritage Sites are meant to protect." Marcus walked to the glass wall and pressed his palm against it, feeling the warmth the sun had stored there. "James Holloway was 36 when he died," he said quietly. "He never saw anyone live in this house. He never knew if his ideas would work. He just built something beautiful and hoped it would matter." "It mattered," Maria said. "It still matters. And now the whole world knows." That evening, after the celebration had wound down and the visitors had gone, Marcus found himself alone in the house for a rare moment. Sarah had taken Lily into town for ice cream, leaving him to process the day's news in solitude. He walked through the spaces that had become more familiar than any place he had ever lived. The kitchen where he had learned to cook over a wood stove. The reading nook where Lily had devoured hundreds of books. The bedroom where he and Sarah had built a new life together without erasing the old one. And everywhere the light. Always the light changing with the hours, connecting inside to outside, making the walls between them and the world feel like suggestions rather than barriers. "Elena," he said softly, "I hope you can see this. I hope you know what happened. Your daughter is amazing. She's strong and fierce and full of hope, just like you wanted her to be. And I'm okay. Finally, after everything, I'm actually okay." The house held his words like a prayer, the glass walls carrying them out to the sky where stars were beginning to appear. "I used to think you died and left us with nothing. But you left us with Lily. You left us with each other. And somehow that was enough. That was everything." The door opened and Lily bounded an ice cream cone in hand, Sarah following with a smile. "Daddy, they had pistachio, your favorite." Marcus wiped his eyes quickly and turned to embrace his daughter. "Did you get me some—" "Of course, I'm not a monster." Sarah handed him a small container of pistachio ice cream and kissed his cheek. "You okay?" "Yeah, just talking to Elena." "What did you tell her?" "That we made it. That everything turned out better than we could have dreamed." Lily looked up at him with her mother's eyes, ice cream already smeared across her chin. "Do you think Mommy helped like from heaven or wherever she is?" Marcus thought about the phone call that came at exactly the right moment. About the house that was waiting for them when they had nowhere else to go. About the strangers who became allies, and the enemy who became a benefactor, and the series of impossible coincidences that led them here. "Yeah, baby," he said. "I think maybe she did." That night, the Thompson family gathered on the hillside above their glass house, watching stars appear through the clear mountain air. Lily pointed out constellations she had learned from her astronomy books. Sarah leaned against Marcus's shoulder, warm and present and real. The glass house glowed below them, a beacon on the hillside visible for miles. "We should come up here every year on this day," Lily said. "Make it a tradition, the day our house became a World Heritage Site." "I like that," Sarah agreed. "We could call it Gratitude Day." "That's cheesy. You love cheese?" "I love cheese on pizza. This is the wrong kind of cheese." Marcus laughed, a real laugh, deep and full, the kind he had forgotten he was capable of making until this house taught him again. "What about Heritage Day?" he suggested. "We could tell stories about how we got here, remember the struggles, and celebrate how far we've come." Lily considered this. "I like that better, less cheesy." "Marginally less cheesy," Sarah corrected. "Fine, marginally less cheesy, but still good." They sat together as the temperature dropped and the stars multiplied, talking about the past and dreaming about the future. And Marcus realized with a clarity that felt like coming home that this was what he had been searching for his entire life. Not money or success or recognition, not a house worth $80 million or a World Heritage designation. Just this. Family gathered under stars. Love that survived loss. Hope that outlasted despair. Home. He thought about the desperate man he had been 2 years ago, counting pennies and clipping coupons and wondering if he would be able to keep his daughter fed. That man felt like a stranger now, someone Marcus had known once but had grown beyond. The glass house hadn't just given them shelter. It had given them transformation. It had taught them that the walls we hide behind are less important than the light we let in. "Daddy," Lily's voice broke through his thoughts. "Thank you." "For what, baby?" "For not giving up. When everybody said the house was worthless and we should sell it, when the bad man was trying to take it away, when everything was scary and hard, you didn't give up." "I thought about it," Marcus admitted. "More than once." "But you didn't do it." "No, I didn't." "Why not?" Marcus looked at his daughter, at the young woman she was becoming, at the fierce and gentle soul that had survived more than any child should have to endure. Because giving up would have meant teaching you that hope doesn't matter. And I knew in my bones that hope is the most important thing we have. More important than money, more important than comfort, more important than anything. Lily nodded slowly, processing this the way she processed everything important deeply, thoroughly, with her whole heart. Mommy would say you were right. I hope so. She would. I know she would. Lily stood up, brushing grass from her pajamas. I'm going to bed. Big day tomorrow. I have to give a tour to those students from Japan. Good night, baby. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Sarah. She walked down the hillside toward the glowing house. Hopeful tucked under her arm, her silhouette dark against the warm light spilling through the glass walls. Sarah took Marcus's hand. You did good, she said softly. Elena would be proud. I had help, from a lot of people. From you. You had help because you asked for it. Because you were humble enough to accept it. That's not weakness, Marcus. That's wisdom. They sat together as the night deepened and the glass house held its light against the darkness. Tomorrow there would be visitors and responsibilities and the ongoing work of sharing what they had learned. Tomorrow there would be challenges and opportunities and all the complications of a life lived in public view. But tonight there was only this two people who loved each other, watching over a house that had saved them, carrying forward a vision that had been born 50 years ago in the mind of a genius who died too young. Marcus Thompson had come to the glass house with nothing except his daughter and his determination. He had been told he was inheriting something worthless. He had been pressured and threatened and nearly broken. But he had held on. And in holding on, he had discovered something that all the money in the world couldn't buy, a home that taught him how to live, a community that taught him how to belong, and a purpose that taught him how to matter. The glass house glowed in the darkness, transparent and strong, hiding nothing and holding everything. Inside those walls, Lily was already asleep, dreaming of the architect she would become. Inside those walls, the legacy of James Holloway and Margaret Thompson lived on. Inside those walls, the future was taking shape. And Marcus Thompson, the single father who had once counted every penny and wondered how he would survive another week, finally understood what Elena had been trying to tell him all along. Home isn't about the walls that hide you from the world. It's about the light that lets the world see who you really are. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to keep hoping, stubborn enough to keep fighting, and wise enough to accept help when it's offered, sometimes the thing everyone dismisses as worthless turns out to be worth everything. Sometimes a glass house in the middle of nowhere becomes exactly where you were always meant to be.